I will keep my word.
What made you change that position at the time?
Well, let's be clear. My values have not changed. What I have seen is that we can grow and we can increase a thriving clean energy economy without banning fracking.
Just one other question about something that you said in 2019 when you first ran. There was a debate. You raised your hand when asked whether or not the border should be decriminalized. Do you still believe that?
I believe there should be consequence. We have laws that have to be followed and enforced that address and deal with people who cross our border illegally, and there should be consequence.
Generally speaking, how should voters look at some of the changes that you've made, that you've explained some of here in your policy? Is it because you have more experience now and you've learned more about the information? Is it because you were running for president in a Democratic primary? And should they feel comfortable and confident that what you're saying now is going to be your policy moving forward?
Dana, I think the most important and most significant aspect of my policy perspective and decisions is my values have not changed.
I want to get in the room here to get some initial reactions with our great panel. David Axelrod, let's start with you. What did you make of how Vice President Harris did she meet the moment?
Yeah, I think she did what she needed to do. What she needed to do was be the same person that people have seen on the stage for the last month and have seen a new sense of sort of confidence, of calm and comfortable comfort that we haven't seen before from her. We didn't see certainly the last time she ran. She was very connected to her word. She seemed strong. She seemed competent. She seemed like someone who could be president of the United States. That was the first test. One thing, because I know we got a lot of opinions here.
We have time for yours, don't worry.
But, I think well, two things then. I think that she handled the issue of her changes or perceived changes in policy pretty well. I mean, I think the idea that her values have been the same and have been consistent was a good bridge there. One thing that I want to note is we were asking the question earlier, how will she handle the president and will she separate herself from the president? And there might be some political logic to doing that. She's talking about turning the page. Does she want to be a continuation? That's what the Republicans will want to make her out to be. I'll give Scott the opportunity to do it in a second. But as she spoke, I thought it showed a certain character, the way she talked about Joe Biden. She didn't run away from him. She gave him, I think, his due. She understands that there's some political risk to that. That actually was elevating to me in a way that I hadn't expected. So I think on the whole, this was a good night. It wasn't a huge, I don't think she moved the ball that much forward, but she certainly didn't fall back.
The do no harm principle of politicking here.
Yeah,
Audie?
I mean, interviews, they can be combat, they can be a conversation. And what she needed to do was communicate. And so often in the past, she comes to an interview in a way prepared to be the interrogator. And people already know she's good at asking sharp, tough questions of people who she feels deserve scrutiny. It's her being under that scrutiny that has been where the stakes have been higher. And I think today it did show that she has the ability to sit down and have that back and forth that Republicans are talking about. Can she really do it? So how many more times? I don't know how much that matters. And I do get a little nervous that in the media we're preoccupied with like how much access, how many conversations is she going to have in the settings we deem most valuable to voters, when this is a campaign that is actually making a mark in an interesting way, reaching out to people directly.
But Asad, you have also spent a couple of times now interviewing her. What did you make of how she handled it? I mean, to David's point, a little bit more comfortable now than she has been in the past.
Yeah, I think there's been a consistent story of growth. She's been in more of these settings. I think we saw that somewhat tonight. I also think to the question about how policy positions have changed, they were clearly ready with an answer about how the values have been consistent. For me, one of the lines that stuck out was, this is a new, I think people are ready for a new way forward. She said that a couple times. It goes to David's point. I don't think there's a policy separation that they've created with Biden. Obviously, she gave a kind of personal defense of him, but they're also very clearly trying to position her as a change candidate in the same way that Donald Trump is positioning himself as a change candidate. In some ways, it feels as if that's going to be the crux of what this comes down to in November, is whether that is bought by the electorate or not.
And interestingly, there is some polling to suggest that it's a battle right now. It's actually a live ball.
It seems that that's where this might live and die, but I think it's really interesting because for someone who doesn't want to talk about race and gender, who doesn't want to kind of put that identity forward, it is allowing her to make the case of change without kind of saying those words. And so I thought that was really in the air of this speech. But to the point about normal versus weird, the future versus past dichotomy that they're trying to create, I think they landed that tonight. I think they want to present them as a package that is relatable to people and that is someone who feels familiar,
you can put me down,
whose story is familiar, whose message
for that
is familiar
day, so
and relatable. And I think that's something that she's grown in, and we saw that this evening.
If there's an update, I will let you know. It could be an update by a couple of hours,
values, vision, and her voice. And I think she made it very clear that she is still committed to her values, to be an American, to be a prosecutor, even though she may have changed on some positions, and she clearly outlined.
Of course. I'm not going to let it go totally. I got you. Most likely I'm going to make it happen. Okay, so you got me for what? Tuesday the 8th at what time?
About Donald Trump, but still being very clear and not berating her current boss, actually. And when you think about the opposite ticket of J.D. Vance, where Donald Trump's vice president isn't even on the ticket anymore, we don't need to go down why that is the case, but she was clearly able to draw her vision for how she wants to take the country forward with her opportunity economy, and then her voice. I think so many Americans want to know, who is she and does she have command of her voice? And she answered every question. Now, you might not like the way she answered them, but she answered them as a capable, qualified leader. And I do think she moved the ball forward a little bit. You know, maybe she didn't score a touchdown tonight, but she definitely moved down the field.
All right, Scott.
I agree with Ested about this idea of the question of who's going to change will be the fundamental defining question of the election. And
actually don't think the Kamala Harris moved the ball at all. But I think she did better at the DNC convention when she was standing. I think she was very, very, very strong there. But I think in the interview, for me, she looks kind of weak. But I guess everybody got different point of view, and I think it's okay. It's okay to have different point of view. We don't have to keep saying the same stuff all the time. We can have different viewpoints, and it's okay.
And I was sort of watching this, holistically. What is she saying? What does she look like? What's on the screen? So at the beginning, when she's talking about Biden and their record, our screen said, this is called the Chiron, the headline at the bottom. It said, Harris stands by Biden administration economic record. She is making it clear that she will embrace and be a continuation of Biden's economic policy, his record, what they've done. She offered no remorse, no regrets, no introspection about anything they've done. She continued to blame inflation on this fantasy price gouging idea. She had no additional thoughts on the economic situation in the country or what they've done beyond just saying, Joe Biden and I have done a great job. Now, if I were the Trump people, I would be salivating over the idea that that's how they are going to run the race. I don't believe it's tenable. I also thought it was interesting that she didn't take any responsibility at the end for telling the American people that Joe Biden was fine and he was strong. We all know that's not true. That's why he's out of the race, and she's still standing by the idea that he was fine and he's strong and that he's fine today. Nobody believes that, and I just think at some point,
I don't think she can betray the president when you're vice president. You cannot ask her to do all that. I don't think she can betray the president.
Then why isn't he running?
Because he's too old, point blank. Same reason why Donald Trump probably shouldn't be running, because he's too old and out of touch.
I think most Americans know the truth, and when you're running to be president and you're willing to look them in the face and tell them something they know that is not true, it does speak a little bit to your character.
Scott, and curious what you think about this, Axe. Will voters care about that part of it, which is kind of backward looking, or do they care about what's next?
Well, I think the part of what Scott raised that could be problematical if they prosecute it properly is, I think Biden deserves a lot more credit, frankly, for guiding the country through the pandemic and the economic calamity that he walked into than he gets. But inflation over a period of years has been a heavy toll on people here and around the world, but around the world is not relevant here. And so to the degree that they can say, she is going to continue doing exactly what Joe Biden was doing for people who don't have confidence in Biden's policies, that is a prospective problem.
Okay, let me see, I don't know, maybe you guys see it like that. Like, there's an energy that people have when you look at them. You see that they are there with you. They don't look tired. I personally feel like she looks a little bit tired. Like, when I'm looking at you, you don't look, Abby Phillip doesn't look tired. She looks like she's here. Like, that's the way I see it. Like, I don't understand, like for me, when I look at him, like her, and during the debate, she looks that she wasn't that interested, like, in the conversation.
I don't think the thing about, this whole thing about, you didn't say it tonight, but you've said before, and I just disagree with this notion that, Dan actually asked a question, well, you've been there for 3.5 years. No vice president makes policy, okay? Let's just make that clear.
Well,
nobody, I've said this to you before, nobody talks about the Pence years, okay? Nobody talks about the Biden years when Obama was, but nobody does that. So, but it is a challenge for her to take credit for the things that are good and to try and walk away from the things that are not.
But she did make policy, though. I mean, she said, I was the last person in the room on Afghanistan, and she cast many tie-breaking votes in the Senate.
She didn't, that's different than saying that she made the decision.
Yeah.
She claimed to be his last and most principal advisor on Afghanistan. That is not.
She said,
That's her words.
she said she was the last person in the room.
What does that mean to you?
She created the Afghanistan
It means that
policy.
she told him whatever she thought, and he did whatever he thought he wanted to do.
One of the things that struck me about, and as someone who, like Ested, has covered Kamala Harris before, she is a homework doer. And you can see the homework has been done in this interview. And it really kind of makes me wonder about, as we push toward this debate that's coming up, this meeting between these two, what kind of debate sparring partner is she going to be against Trump? And to me, the answer was discipline.
Yeah, she's ready to be on the defense. I don't think that is a difficult place for her to be. I think it's easier for her to be prosecutorial. And I believe, isn't the sparring partner that Trump is preparing with Tulsi Gabbard, who has actually been toe-to-toe with Kamala Harris. So I do think you are going to see kind of an energetic conversation. But part of it is, what is she like on the offense? We know what she's like on the defense.
For the first time, we are hearing about how President Biden broke the news to his own vice president that he was dropping out of the race. Listen.
I'm just curious, staying on President Biden, when he called you and said he was pulling out of the race, what was that like? And did he offer to endorse you right away, or did you ask for it?
It is extraordinary. First of all, I just want to say that I wasn't sure what she was going to say and what she would offer, if anything, about that conversation, which was obviously private, but it was also historic, which is clearly why she wanted to get some of it on the record for history now, because it's going to come out probably eventually. But are you sure? You're exactly right. That kind of moment where, look, it wasn't as if it was a surprise in the instant that it happened. A lot of people weren't sure that the president was going to finally decide, you know what, I'm out of here. But obviously, we remember the pressure was mounting. We do know that from our reporting that just in case, she was not doing anything, but just in case some of the people who are in the Kamala Harris orbit were just kind of getting everything ready just in case it happened. But that was a human moment. This is a man who took her out of the United States Senate, made her his running mate. She made history with that. And he was giving her some pretty big news about himself. And then, of course, it was off to the races for her to try to do something even more historic, to be the president, but also just with regard to the campaign process, to scramble to secure the nomination, which wasn't really, if you remember, Abby, it wasn't really set in stone that she was going to get it as quickly as she did. Yeah. We weren't sure what the process was, but she sewed it up in about 24 hours. I also just want to say that just that human element there of what she was doing, you know this, you've covered her, and I know a lot of people at the table. She loves the Sunday dinner. She loves to cook. Being there in the morning with her family, making them bacon, about to do a puzzle. It was just kind of the picture of it all.
It's certainly not what you would
It's
expect.
really stunning.
It's not what you would expect.
Oh, fuck.
That human element there of what she was doing. You know this, you've covered her, and I know a lot of people at the table. She loves the Sunday dinners, she loves to cook. Being there in the morning with her family, making them bacon, about to do a puzzle. It was just kind of the picture of it all.
It's certainly not what you would
It's
expect.
really stunning.
It's not what you would expect if somebody were, say, expecting big news that weekend, having the grandnieces over, going about your morning. I mean, it really was, despite all of the talk around it, she was continuing on, and you know this as well as I do. When you talk to people around her, that was the sort of mentality that came from the top down in Harris world, was that they were going to be blinders on moving forward, and in that moment, that is exactly what she was doing.
Yeah, it was. And she was very careful. You know, we've heard Republicans say, oh, it was, well, the former president, it was a coup and she threw him overboard. That is not what happened. There were some Democrats who wanted him to go. She personally, from your reporting, my reporting, everybody else, she was being very, very cautious and very respectful of Joe Biden to let him make his decision in his own way, in his own time.
All right, Dana, stay with us because we'll be back with you shortly for more from this great interview. But I want to bring it into the panel here. The word loyalty is something I heard from people in Harris world about how she approached what was happening with Joe Biden. But I know, Scott, I mean, obviously we've been talking about this on this show a lot because I know that you feel very strongly that maybe she should have, in your view, been more honest. I want to play what she told Dana about that question of what did you tell the American people about what Joe Biden was like as president, and was it the truth?
Right after the debate, you insisted that President Biden is extraordinarily strong. Given where we are now, do you have any regrets about what you told the American people?
No, not at all. Not at all. I have served with President Biden for almost 4 years now, and I'll tell you, it's one of the greatest honors of my career, truly. He cares so deeply about the American people. He has the intelligence, the commitment, and the judgment and disposition that I think the American people rightly deserve in their president. By contrast, the former president has none of that.
It was a carefully worded answer, but one that really was very careful not to even in the slightest way undermine President Biden.
Yeah, I sort of simultaneously admire the loyalty, actually, because it would be tempting to just say, you know what, this was ridiculous, and he made it. But she didn't. But at the same time, you know, before he got out of the race, upwards of 90% of the American people thought he was too old to run again, and she was out there in the face of that saying, no, he's fine. She's still saying that. And no one really believes it. So I guess the real fundamental question is, are people going to give her the grace on that and say, well, she's got to say that because it's her boss?
Or give her the credit for having grace.
Right.
Which is, I think,
that's the point that she
one
was
footnote that we're not talking about, and maybe it's not relevant, but obviously there is so much about how she is where she is, in part because of her friendship with the late Beau Biden. There was a real friendship there. There is some respect there, and I think it did affect the relationship that she has with Joe Biden. I don't think that loyalty is perfunctory because there is a personal connection there.
And even when a year or two ago, when people were speculating about whether Joe Biden should throw Kamala Harris off the ticket, that loyalty played a key role in the reason why Biden was very tuned all of that stuff out. She has been like this since the day she was selected and made a very clear decision that this is how she was going to see the role of president. And I think that served her and her relationship with Biden, who feels like that's how he treated that role. I think it informed her decision for Tim Walz, who kind of said that he would be a similarly deferential figure.
But it's not just this interpersonal stuff. I mean, it's also on the policy.
Yes.
I mean, Dana asked her, you've said Bidenomics is a success. And she said effectively, yes. She talked about prescription drug prices. She talked about manufacturing jobs. She talked about bringing down child poverty. She didn't back away from even the idea of Bidenomics.
And you know what? I'm sorry, Ashley, go ahead.
No, please.
No, if you ask the American people about any of those things, they would give those things high marks. The problem that the president got into is he was personalizing all of this, and any criticism of the economy he took as a personal affront to him. He thought shepherding the economy through this disaster was one of his achievements, and those points were achievements. What she did in this interview that he never did was say all those things are true, and yet people were feeling the effects of costs. And that's something we have to redouble our efforts to address. That is the right way to answer the question.
I agree. That's why I let you go first. No, I totally agree. I just want to say one thing on the loyalty and the vice president. I'll sound like a broken record. I don't think that's the fight you want to pick with this ticket. When you look
I'm not picking any fights.
Are you not?
No.
I just don't think it's something that you need to double down on.
I'm not the one here. I'm not the number here. I'm not picking fights.
Okay. Well, I don't think Donald Trump wants to pick that fight when we look about what happened to his last vice president. I think there is a constant contrast that we owe it to the American people to remind them of, is that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris were loyal. I remember at the night he spoke, she went up and said, I love you. Like, it's real, and that's not what we can talk.
It is such an important point, because I think sometimes we get caught up in the spin. That the spin that this was a coup does not make any sense, because Joe Biden himself made the decision to step aside, A, and B, that the two of them still apparently maintain a very good relationship. We saw it on full display. What was it, a week ago?
Well, her involvement in it may have been more minimal, but there were people pushing him out. Let's be honest.
It feels bizarre to still be talking about something weeks ago, and on the debate stage, is that how you want to spend
this
time?
is it's economy, immigration, food.
But you know something? There's a level at which this presidential politics works that is nonlinear, that is not all about paint to dot kind of policy discussions. It's about who is this person?
Yes.
What is their character? And in that sense, and that's why I said at the beginning of this discussion, I was actually impressed by the way she talked about the president, because it reflected character, and I think people want character in their president. They may not be thinking they're going to find it in Donald Trump.
Tim Walz responding to Republicans who called him out for claiming that he carried guns into war. Listen.
You said that you carried weapons in war, but you have never deployed actually in a war zone. A campaign official said that you misspoke. Did you?
Well, first of all, I'm incredibly proud. I've done 24 years of wearing the uniform of this country. Equally proud of my service in a public school classroom, whether it's Congress or the governor. My record speaks for itself, but I think people are coming to get to know me. I speak like they do. I speak candidly. I wear my emotions on my sleeves, and I speak especially passionately about our children being shot in schools and around guns. So I think people know me. They know who I am. They know where my heart is.
Did you misspeak, as the campaign has said?
Yeah, I said we were talking about, in this case, this was after a school shooting, the ideas of carrying these weapons of war. And my wife, the English teacher, told me my grammar's not always correct.
I just want to remind you, here are those 2018 comments that Republicans have been highlighting. Listen.
I'll take my kick in the butt for the NRA. I spent 25 years in the Army, and I hunt. And I gave the money back, and I'll tell you what I have been doing. I've been voting for common sense legislation that protects the Second Amendment, but we can do background checks. We can do CDC research. We can make sure we don't have reciprocal carry among states, and we can make sure that those weapons of war that I carried in war is the only place where those weapons are at.
And I carried in war is the operative part there. Again, Tim Walz was never in combat, but he did serve in the National Guard for 24 years. Let's bring in Dana Bash again. She's in Savannah, Georgia, where this interview took place. Dana, an important exchange on an issue that has been dogging him since he became the vice presidential nominee.
Yes, no question about it. And look, this is such a different process than any campaign goes through to pick the running mate. There usually is a pretty substantial vetting process. I don't know if the Harris campaign, the baby campaign that it was at the time, knew about these comments. My suspicion is no, because I think they used it in some early videos. But it's the kind of thing that you want to kind of be buttoned up about and not take weeks to kind of clean up. It is the first interview that he has done, so it's the first chance he has gotten to try to clean it up, aside from that spokesperson from the campaign that I was talking about. But it's the kind of broader question of who is this guy, and the way that they put him out there at the beginning of when he was picked, and also at the convention, is kind of who he is. He is a coach, he is a father, and that's definitely the kind of person they would have put out there. They're talking less about him as a veteran. He has a tremendous record as a veteran, and he is somebody who served, and a lot of people say he should be thanked for it, and I'm not here to disagree with that.
Yeah, I mean, the 24 years are 24 years, so that speaks for itself. The question is now whether voters will care about the other part of this. Dana, thank you very much for all of this great interview, and for joining us.
Thanks, Abby.
For
Thanks
the
for
post
having me.
game. And joining our panel here, Sharon Michael Singleton, Jamal Simmons, and Maggie Haberman. Maggie, this is a core part of what the Trump campaign has been spending a lot of their time on. The Trump campaign manager, Trump himself. Are they frustrated, though, that it feels like maybe it hasn't stuck as much as they would like it to?
There is a singular obsession that the Trump campaign has with this issue, as you note. My biggest, and I don't think it's an illegitimate point to ask questions about, but Tim Walz is the number 2. He's not running for president. Kamala Harris is the number 1. And so they have spent, I think it's 5 weeks now, focusing on this issue. And for 3 of those weeks, at least, they were doing nothing to define the vice president. So, I think they are frustrated in part because there were so many attacks on J.D. Vance, and J.D. Vance had a rough time in that first week out after the RNC. And I think a lot of this is about that, frankly. I have seen little sign that voters care much about this. Again, they are voting for the person who is running for president, not the number 2, which is also true with Trump and J.D. Vance.
Yeah, and look, we see that in the numbers. I mean, J.D. Vance.
A black man that is a president of the United States is a white man. He's a white man. He's a white man. You wait.
Vance has really taken a hit in his unfavorables.
No question.
But Jamal, just real talk though, why not just say you misspoke?
Well,
that was a little surprising.
He did say, I own my mistakes. He did say that in his answer. I own my mistakes. So I think he went on to talk about, put them into some context. Here's the reality. I think, as Maggie was just saying, people aren't really judging this. When I was in the vice president's office, people spent a lot of time going after Kamala Harris on the Republican side. Turns out, didn't really make much of a difference, right? As soon as she launched as a presidential candidate, nobody seemed to remember what happened before when she was a vice presidential candidate. The thing that struck me the most when I was watching that, she said something that was very Kamala Harris. She started talking about the opportunity economy. She started talking about investing in families. And when she did that, she said, so that people can buy car seats, clothes, cribs. It was very specific. This is the way that when she goes out and she campaigns with the American people, she talks to them not just about the big policy, but about the way that they interact with that policy in their own specific lives.
Sure, Michael, what do you make of
Walz,
by the way, was at this interview in a way that is not atypical for, a post-convention interview, but what did you make of it?
I don't think it really matters whether or not he was there or not. I know some conservatives have attempted to make a big deal about this. You're right. Most voters don't care about the number 2. They care about the number 1. But I do think there's a possibility for this to become an issue. He could have just said, look, I misspoke. It happens all the time in politics in the heat of the moment. I think most people would understand that, but that's not what he said. He said, my record speaks for itself. Well, does it? We don't know what your record is. Maybe if you're in your home state, people may know, but not the American people. Then he said, well, I wear my emotions on my chest. Well, that showcases some level of instability, not stability. Then he said, well, people know me. Again, no, we don't know you. That's why you're doing this interview. Then he said, well, my wife said my grammar sometimes isn't always correct. Those were terrible answers. And so you're literally making an issue that should really be a non-issue, potentially an issue, by the way he responded, when he simply could have said, look, I misspoke. I apologize. Let's move on to something else. And he didn't.
I don't know if you know this, but some people call you a fascist.
Yeah, they do. So I figure it's all right to call them a communist. Yeah, they call me a lot worse than I call them.
A lot of people listening to this, myself included, that doesn't think that Kamala is a communist.
I believe you have to fight fire with fire.
Politics is a dirty game.
It is a dirty game. It's certainly true.
How do you win at that game?
They suffer from massive Trump derangement syndrome, TDS, and I don't know if it's curable from their standpoint.
I think we'd probably have a better world if everybody in Congress took some mushrooms, perhaps.
First of all, medical marijuana has been amazing. I've had friends and I've had others and doctors telling me that it's been absolutely amazing.
The list of clients that went to the island has not been made public.
Yeah, it's very interesting, isn't it?
All right, y'all, welcome to the show. I got a great one for you. So right off the bat here, we're going to be discussing the new polls that just dropped. And look, to put it simply, Kamala keeps skyrocketing. She keeps going up and up and up and up. So I'll give you those numbers.
You know what I think is going on with Kamala? The voting black that is the always very loyal. I think it's the black women for the Democratic Party. Let me see. The most loyal. Let me see something. I don't have to do it like that. Let me see. I don't have to do it like that. Okay. Let's keep this thing like this. Okay. Which is the most loyal voting black? I want to research that. Hold on. Oh, fuck, man. Okay, sorry, guys. I don't mean to curse. Which is the most loyal voting black? Which demographic is the most loyal voting black for the Democratic Party?
I can't help with responses on election.
Then we'll get to.
You know why? Okay, so I just read it, guys. I just wanted to tell you, I read something that was very important. The most loyal voting black in the Democratic Party is the black woman. You know, they're having the most loyal. So which means here we got Kamala Harris, a black woman, that's going to become president. Now, you think that the black women are not going to be galvanized? They want to see themselves on top of the world. And the black women have been going back to college. They're making move. You know what I'm saying? They want to show themselves as smart and strong because the black man is failing. The black woman has to win. You know, the black man is in jail. The black woman has to go to college. You know, so that's the way it is.
To Trump outdoes himself yet again and tells an insane lie about trans surgeries in school. I mean, what am I supposed to say? Jesus Christ. All right. Then we'll get to the Trump deli meat deregulation. Now the chickens are coming home to roost over that policy that Trump pursued. And we have people dying. People dying as a result of poisoned deli meat. And the reason it is poisoned is because we took away the referees. We took away the cops on the beat, making sure that our food is not poisoned and toxic. So we'll get to that. And then Later on, man, I got quite a video for you. I got to be honest, guys. As somebody who is in independent media, in this new media space, I got to keep it real. I think independent media is fucked. I do. I think independent media has largely lost their way. I know we criticize mainstream media a lot and corporate media a lot, and we should, and I stand by my criticisms of that industry. But let's be honest, independent media has their own problems, and they're honestly just as severe as mainstream media's problems. So I'll break that down for you a little bit later. And more. So everybody do me a big favor, subscribe, helps out massively, costs you nothing. And without any further ado, let's go ahead and dive into it. So let's start with this. So we got some new numbers about Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, and I got to break this down for you. So first, our boy Tim, here are his net favorables. He went in Minnesota from plus 15 to plus 19, just through the roof. People just like this guy. There's something about his vibe. They just fucking like him. And honestly, I got to keep it real. I don't even think it's necessarily because his record is so phenomenal. I don't know how many people know a lot about his record. I think he just gives off like down-to-earth vibes where people are like, yeah, I like that guy. He seems down to earth. But to the extent people do know about his policy record, I think the thing he's most known for is doing free school breakfast and free school lunch for kids. And that's going to make people like you. Okay, so he's plus 19 in Minnesota, plus 16 in Michigan, plus 14 in Wisconsin, plus 13 in Georgia, plus 13 in Nevada, plus 12 in Pennsylvania, plus 11 in New Mexico, plus 8 in Arizona, plus 8 in North Carolina, and plus 7 in Florida. By far, the most popular person in this race. If you look at the total scope, so you got Tim Walz, Kamala Harris, J.D. Vance, and Donald Trump. Tim Walz is by far the most popular person in this race. Okay, but I got more. So compare this to J.D. Vance. Look at this. Here's his net favorable polling average. This isn't state by state. This is the overall one, but you get the picture. On July 18th, Vance was underwater, minus 3.3 percentage points. By July 25th, he had dropped to 5.3 percentage points underwater. Then steadily declining all the way to late August, August 26th, he's down at minus 9.7%. So it depends on which poll you look at. In some polls, J.D. Vance is the most disliked person in this race. In fact, I'd go as far as to say most polls, he's the most disliked. But there are some where Trump is the most disliked in this race. But polar opposite here of Tim Walz. Okay, but we're just getting started. So a bunch of national polls came out. Look at this, guys. RMG poll. Again, national. RMG poll. Harris 51, Trump 48. Clarity Campaign Labs. Harris 51, Trump 45. We should point out, the last poll had it a 1-point race for Republicans with the Electoral College system. At the moment, at least that's how it works in past few elections. But she's up 6. Okay. All right. Do I have any more for you? Yes, I do. Harris seen as more personally favorable and more qualified to be president. So favorability, we got Harris 46, Trump 33. And then even on qualified to be president, you got Harris 53, Trump 47. So in other words, now we're starting to see in topics and areas where usually Republicans have a lead, now Kamala's starting to lead on their strong ground, right? Another one is always the economy. Usually for the economy, Republicans always have an advantage, sometimes as much as like 20-point advantage on the economy. There was a poll that came out the other week, had Kamala Harris up on Trump by a point when it came to who do you trust with the economy. So when she's winning on the economy, she's winning on favorability, she's winning on qualified to be president. I guess the Willie Brown attacks didn't work, right? I guess the Trump comments on blowjobs is not really landing. Pawning off her whole career to blowjobs, which is what he retweeted some shit about that the other day. It's not working. It's not working. So there's only one more domino to fall, I think, guys, for Kamala to have a clean sweep on leading Trump. And it would be if she starts to lead Trump on the issue of who's better on dealing with immigration. That is the one go-to completely solid for Republicans. And my guess is she's closed the gap. It's possible we see at some point she ends up leading on that one too, which would be an absolute game changer. And then finally, let me give you some more favorability ratings in the latest ABC poll. Kamala is +3 in favorability. Tim Walz is +11. Donald Trump is minus 25. And J.D. Vance is minus 12. So there is a huge likability gap, man, in this race. There's just a massive likability gap. And it is not looking good for Trump. Look, he needs to reverse this trend, and he needs to reverse it soon if he doesn't want to have an absolute fucking blowout. Because I got to be honest with you, that's what we're trending towards. And I haven't said anything about the fact that there is a secret contingent of Democratic voters right now, according to the recent elections. In the special elections, Democrats massively outperformed the polls. In the 2022 midterms, Democrats outperformed the polls. Now, back before that, it was actually the opposite. In 2016 and 2020, it was Trump who overperformed the polls. This time, now he's underperforming. In fact, in the Republican primary, when he was up against Nikki Haley, he would underperform the polls by about 8 points. So if we have that secret Democratic vote, if Trump is overestimated in the polls, and now all the information is coming out, by the way, voter registration is skyrocketing among black women. So all the signs are really not looking good for Trump. And now this is the first time we're having a conversation about polls where Kamala Harris is up 6 points. By the way, to put that in perspective for you, at this point before the 2012 election, Barack Obama was only up 1 percentage point on Mitt Romney. 1. And he ended up winning that race pretty comfortably. So there you have it. The big guy's in trouble. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big